that conversation, you said on the way to the chicken shop,
Yeah.
that conversation touched something that touched you deep at your core. And at that point it was all right, okay, you now need to start shifting your plans and aligning them more with what this sense of call is. Welcome to Conversations with Nick, a podcast that invites remarkable everyday people to share their experiences of navigating life, love, and leadership. My name's Nick Ferguson, and I'm thrilled you're joining us today because I know today's guest will resonate with anyone who's ever felt the tension between what they do and who they are. Today's guest has lived through one of the most challenging transitions, stepping away from nearly 2 decades in church leadership to reinvent himself in an entirely different sector. He's now on the leadership team of a pioneering charity in the UK. I'm confident that his journey from pulpit to his current role, which is filled with an honest wrestle with identity, purpose, and the challenges of navigating family life, will speak to many of you. So without further ado, Jon Jarvis, welcome to the podcast.
Wow, thanks, Nick. Quite the introduction. I'll do my best to be a remarkable and wonderful guest, but I'm hoping I'll be able to share something today to help someone, even if that one is just me. So, but happy to share, and hopefully we'll be able to be a benefit to someone. But thanks for having me, Nick.
I'm absolutely confident it will be. We've had a conversation before this in a coffee shop, and we spent a good time together, just having sharing some of our shared history and a lot of what we spoke about resonated. So I'm confident that what you're going to bring today and what we're going to have, sharing this conversation will really add value to those who are listening and watching. So thank you for your time. All right. So one of the things I love to ask anybody who comes on the podcast, any conversations I have, firstly, is just start with this. Who is Jon Jarvis?
Just who is Jon Jarvis? Yeah, let's start big. Today, I'm a husband and I'm a dad. I'm in my 40s. I've got 3 young kids, all at primary school, so that takes up a lot of time, effort, energy. And as you mentioned, I work for a fantastic charity called Talkwell here in Gloucestershire, who offer free counselling and support for children and young people. There's a big long gap between the start and where we are today, but I'm a Dagenham kid. I grew up on the edge of London and Essex, hence my dulcet tones. But grew up youngest of 3 kids. Both my brothers are much older than me. They're 14 and 16 years older than me. Mum called it a wonderful surprise, but we know what that means. Grew up in Dagenham. My mum and dad, fantastic home. Mum had a reputation for being a bit of a penny saver. If she could save 2 pence by turning a light off or getting a deal somewhere, she would. But then that meant we had a holiday. So she was remarkable in those kind of ways. We didn't have loads of money, just a classic Dagenham family, really. But the reason for that is my dad had a profession that didn't have loads of money in it because he was a Christian minister. He was a pastor of a church.
Okay.
And had been since he left the RAF after his national service in the 50s. Before that, he was a stockbroker, so that it could have been very different. So from the 50s, he pastored a number of churches around the UK, and that's how he and then I ended up being from Dagenham, and that's how the family business started. Really, I think.
I love that you describe it as a family business. I like that.
Yeah. My eldest brother is a pastor as well, so it does feel like a bit of a family business. It's true.
I was a youth pastor, as you know from our previous conversations, and I've had opportunities to be around various men and women in church leadership, and familiar with some of the challenges that come with that. I always felt as a youth pastor what the challenges might have been like for my children, actually. And I know that there were many conversations that we had about that, particularly in myself and Mel, my wife. So I guess I'm curious, what was it like for you being a pastor's son?
I'd say it's like in some ways like anybody else. You don't know any different, do you? You know what your mum and dad do as jobs or as careers is their thing. Perhaps the difference is their world is your world. So it impacted a lot of things, like how much time they had. So my dad would have been out most evenings in the week. You spent most of Sunday at church. Somehow you still had time to. We always had a Sunday roast. I don't know how, like, how they managed to pull off a roast every Sunday after being at church all morning. You'd come home, have a roast dinner, usually with a guest or someone that they brought back, and then back to church again in the evening. So their world becomes your world. So that's definitely true. There's some challenges that come with that in terms of people place quite a bit of expectation on you, perhaps, that because they place a lot of expectation on the pastor. And
Yeah.
then the trickle down effect happens quite quickly, that you're expected to be or behave a certain way. So
Yeah.
you definitely resonate with that. And when you get to your teenage years and you kind of, everyone has that teenage angst and rebellion, certainly that, like, I'm my own man. Definitely like felt a lot of that at some points, definitely. But there's some real benefits to it as well. You grow up around a lot of people. You get to meet people from all different walks of life. Dagenham was like the whitest place in London. And even I remember I'd have been in like 15, 16. I remember the BNP, the British National Party, winning a load of local seats for the
Oh,
local
wow.
council. So there's some
Yeah.
real like racist
Mm.
undertones that went on as the multiculturalism was growing.
Yeah.
There was a defensiveness about that in our town, but church was different. Church was a place where everybody had something in common, and I feel that really benefited me in that kind of culture where you grow up around different cultures and customs. You'd visit lots and lots of people's houses. There's some real benefits to that as well, I think. And then there's some other skills you learn. If you grow up in church, you're probably comfortable standing up in front of people, talking, or you probably, if you had a skill like if you wanted to become learn a musical instrument, there's an opportunity for that. If you wanted to work with kids, there's an opportunity for that. I mean, there's some real pros to that from my early years I'm really grateful for.
So actually just being in that environment, in a sense, really opened your eyes to being able to see so much more, not just in terms of from your family, but in terms of culturally, in terms of
Yeah.
ethnic difference, because there was a lot of tension in the area as well. You can remember as a child with the BNP, for example. Yeah. But also just those expectations that people place on you,
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, I can remember what that was like in terms of just thinking about the challenges of that for my own children. So,
As a result of that, I'll just say this really briefly. I was really determined by the time I was picking things like A levels and getting through your GCSEs. I was so determined. Like, my dad was a minister, my oldest brother was a minister. I was like, I'm definitely not doing that. Out of that real sort of like, I've got to be my own man. I was determined not to.
yeah. And how did that? I mean, you mentioned teenage years. I'm going to be my own man, and you just kind of mentioned it a bit there. What did that look like?
Yeah. I think, like a lot of kids, you learn one way to be in one place and one way in another. I definitely had like various different groups of friends that very rare that never overlapped, and that allowed me to sort of like have all these different versions of myself. Probably that's probably fair to say. My mum was from Lancashire, from a real little village in Lancashire, but spoke like Mrs. Bouquet. Do you remember that from the
Yeah,
old
yeah,
Keeping
yeah,
Up Appearances?
yeah.
She sounded like the poshest person you've ever met, but she lost her accent. My dad was from Southend, and I've grown up in Dagenham, so I'd learn like a way to speak at the table, like, could you pass
Yeah.
the butter, please?
Butterfly.
But if you spoke like that at school, you would be you were done for. Yeah,
Yeah, not good.
but just using that as a little, like a lot of my life became a bit mirrored that sort of scenario where I just became who I wanted to be in different spaces, and I knew how to do that. You kind of learn quite quickly how to do that, and yeah, it never really kind of came to a head. I was never kind of I wasn't didn't never felt like I was wearing masks or pretending to be someone. I just adapted to where I was and tried to be myself as best as possible.
Well, it sounds like you managed that well then, from what you're saying, because I can imagine, in the teenage years in particular, that can be a real challenge. But again, I just wonder whether there was something about the support that you had around you, and a lot of the positive influences that probably helped you in that process.
Yeah, definitely. That's something that it gives you. Whereas
Mm,
certainly in the church that I was growing up in,
mm,
you've got loads of peers. Like,
mm.
making friends isn't hard. We had this like instant friendship group of people that are your age, and you've all got this thing in common. I think it's just that is where you're. If you had to ask like who was the real who was the real me, I'm not sure I'd have been able to answer that. So because there's these different versions of yourself that as you just adapt to where you are. Like, so to what a night out with my school friends would look very different to a night out with my church friends,
Of course.
as you
Yeah.
can guess. Which one was real? Even today, I'd go both,
You're not. Oh, right.
both.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
but they don't fit. So they can't both be in the same place at the same time.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. No, thank you. I guess I'm curious then in terms of just as part of your journey, you know, you've kind of got to adolescence and you're juggling these two parts of yourself really, and there may have been others depending on the context you're in. I'm just curious as to what were any kind of significant life events that maybe shaped, influenced you and your journey to date.
Yeah. I think once I did my A levels. I've always done all right at school, but never. I lacked that kind of, that some people have that cutting edge, just able to like get down. Friend of mine, he would do no work through the year, and then head vanish
They're the
2 weeks
worst
before
ones.
exam. I know, and he just had that ability to just like lock
Mm,
himself down
mm,
and straight A's. So, Dave, if you're listening, that's why we hate you. I never had that. I had that the other annoying trait, which was like I knew how to do just enough to get by. So I
yeah.
did that at GCSEs, did that at A levels, applied to a bunch of unis. Still determined, like I wasn't going to go into the family business, but I did have like I had some. There was something that was in me that was going, uh, you know, this is what you've grown. It is what you know really well, and it is what you're good at. And there was this sort of sense of like, words like calling start coming into that, like more than just career, like what do you want your life to be about? And
Yeah.
it was that side that really started to grow in me at that point. And I remember in the second year of my A levels going, yeah, I think I need to just pause the uni idea for now, because I had this whole planned out. I was going to do
Mm,
this, get into sort of web design and software design and go into all that sort of stuff. I was
mm,
good with computers, which seemed like a good thing in the late 90s. Not a lot of
mm,
people were. I had something in me that go, just need to pause that and just assess that you're taking this in the right direction. So
mm.
I did that. I took a year out, worked for my church for a year doing schools work. So went and did,
Okay.
we went and did like RE lessons and school assemblies and the local schools and stuff. And there was just something about that. The more I was like, obviously that's a big investment of time and money to give up a year like that. But there's something about what I threw into that gave a really good return. It felt good, and it felt like it was connecting with something that was really deep within me. And I started to go like, yeah, this feels like something that's worth throwing yourself into properly, And the guy who was running that internship, and he was like, and he said something like, "You do know you're going to be a pastor one day, don't you?" And I was still holding this, like, no way, come on,
I'm
got
gonna
this
be
own
my own
plan.
man.
I'm going to be my own man, man. And but something about the walk to the chicken shop for lunch with that and
Mm,
that conversation, it stuck, and it was annoying because I think he had put
mm,
his finger on it. He had put his finger on it. I just cancelled my uni applications, and then it was like, okay, you need to make a plan that's going to fit what this like sense of calling that's growing in you as a young
mm.
adult, where that's going to take you.
Wow. So on the one hand, there is this sense of no, not going to go down the same route. I'm not going down the same route, and I'm staying away from the family business.
Yeah,
Start to make your own plans. You're going down one path, and then you have this sense of, you describe it, and I've heard this term before, and I'm familiar with the term.
hmm,
This sense of call, and then a conversation with somebody who I guess you respected, somebody
yeah,
who
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah,
kind of leading you in one respect in terms of as part of
totally.
the internship, and quite an influential figure. And that conversation, you said on the way to the chicken shop,
Yeah,
was it chicken? Was it Morley's or something like
Red Rooster.
that? That conversation touched something that touched you deep at your core, and at that
Mm-hmm.
point, it was all right. Okay, you now need to start shifting your plans and aligning them more with what this sense of call is. Okay. Okay. So what happened next then?
Yeah, so then you go, okay, once you go, where do I need to go now? So you've got the options like seminary, Bible college type routes to get trained through
Mm,
that way. There's other internship options. You could go to uni and do theology or something like
mm,
that, and you could
mm,
just start applying for jobs. It's fairly loose. I decided what I needed to do was get some proper life experience, because I felt if I was going to go into something that requires you to really understand where people are from, or be able to hopefully help, encourage, share, input into people's lives. Like, I got no experience of life other
Mm-hmm.
than, my 18 and a half years at that point.
Surely.
Oh yeah. Oh, I know this now. At 18, you know everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Somehow you know everything at 18, and it tails
Yeah.
off as you get older and older. So, yeah, there's something about I need to get that. I do need to grow in that kind of
Mm.
experience somewhere. So I took a very different route, and I went. My middle brother worked at John Lewis department stores.
Okay.
He told me about a management training program that they got me a connection and got me applying and helped me get onto this management training program. So I thought, well, like, I'll learn leadership, I'll learn principles, I'll meet loads of people, and I'll meet people from all different walks of life, and it'll be a fast track of like understanding people. Because yeah, as much as like I wouldn't say I was I could have been a lot more sheltered growing up. Obviously, parents put a lot of trust and independence in me, but my world was still pretty small. It's still that one world that I knew. Um, and it was great. So I went on this training program, got promotion into management roles. And I always tell us to cut this bit I was there for about 4 years, and the team I was managing when I ended, we were doing all the audio and TV displays. So when when you go
Mm.
to a department store and you've got like, you might
Yeah.
have a lounge
Yeah.
set up or all the TVs, and if something new came in, you had to get that out on display as soon as possible. You got to help with the window displays. This is in Oxford Street as well, so fab place to
Mm-hmm.
be.
Wow.
And that was part of it. So Dagenham to Oxford Street, 16 miles. But anybody that's ever tried commuting in London, that's like an hour and a half of your day every morning. And but I wanted that. I wanted the experience of that. I wanted to know what it was like to have to get up, get a bus and a tube,
Mm.
do the commute, do a day in town, get back
Yeah.
again.
Get back. Yeah.
That's what people that are volunteers in anywhere, places like churches as well. They're doing that every day, getting home,
Yeah.
whiffing some dinner down, getting
That's
back
right.
out
Getting
again
back out. Yeah.
to go and volunteer somewhere or do something. So I needed to know what that felt like. So did that whole thing, and then the team I was managing when I left. I had a Muslim guy, a Hindu, a Catholic, uh, a gay girl, which wasn't particularly prominent early 2000s, and an atheist Kenyan. It's like it
That's a
sounds like the
great
start.
mix.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. But I'm so grateful for them because I learned so much from them. And being in the middle of London, you have that. It's a natural melting pot of all different cultures and customs and people and personalities, and they don't know it, but they taught me so much just in those few years that I was there. Yeah, so I ended up at John
And
Lewis as my seminary.
that was the kind of seminary training. And I think I love that because what you're saying there is that, you being thrown into an environment where you had an opportunity to interact with people from all backgrounds, with
Mm-hmm.
completely different worldviews, completely different experiences. That was part of the preparation for you to being able to then go into church leadership
Mm-hmm.
and being able to serve in that capacity.
Mm.
And I think that's brilliant. I think it's a real gift. Actually, I remember I used to work for I also worked on Charing Cross, corner of Charing Cross Road, so Tottenham
Yeah,
Court Road, that little
yeah,
corner
yeah,
there.
yeah.
I worked there for some time, and also for the employment service. And I remember that was, to this day when I speak about it, people are surprised when I say my job for the employment service in South London was probably one of my most favourite jobs, because every single day I was interacting with people from all walks of life, and just being able to have those interactions. And like you just said, it's possible, depending on your frame of mind and your mindset, to learn from so many
Mm-hmm.
different people. And like you
Mm.
said, they're probably not even aware that you're learning from them. And I think that's a real gift, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you've had your seminary training, John Lewis.
Yeah, yeah.
You've interacted with a range of people. You've developed some leadership skills. You spoke about leadership principles and management. That was all part of that
Mm-hmm.
package. But then you get to almost 2 decades in church leadership, and then you have a moment where you think, I need to do something different. And those are my words. That might not be what you actually said,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but,
Mm-hmm.
but something happened. What made you think that? And feel free to fill in if there's anything that will be helpful to fill in. But what made you think that?
It does link to this whole thing about calling and the value and emphasis more, the weight more than value. It's the weight you place upon that. And when you feel like you're called to do something, and people use that in all different ways, don't they? Or they might say like, I don't do this for a job. I do this as a vocation.
It's a vocation, yeah.
Yeah, it's like what they're the inference is, I work for a charity now, and there's probably everyone in the charity could be paid more for the same job somewhere else. It taps into that, because I'm not doing it for the money. There's a weightiness that comes with this whole thing around calling, and certainly in church leadership, that is valued above all other things. And my first position was at a church in South Woodford, so northeast London. I was there for nearly 4 years, and then moved west to Gloucester. And moving, when you feel a sense of like, I'm doing this because this is what my life is about. I didn't have kids at the time, but I was married. Yeah, we'll just up sticks. We're just two Dagenham kids, but we'll head to the other side of the country where shops don't open after 9 o'clock.
It's a different world.
Yeah, it's 3 minutes at a mini roundabout. So it feels like a traffic jam. I'll do that. But when there's that, of course I will do that. Those decisions are minute because, this is what my calling is.
Yeah.
That's an important context to this, because then what happens when, like you say, Nick, making me feel pretty old and calling it nearly 2 decades, 17 years in, well under 2 decades, you start going, you start realizing like you relied on the feeling that calling gave you to be motivated to put in those 60, 70-hour weeks, and to be out 3, 4, 5 nights a week, and to give up not just Sundays, because that's part of the job, but things that would happen on Saturday, more and more things you'd be doing on Saturdays and weekends, and it demands a lot from you, because you gave it that. I gave it that. I said, I'm called to this, so I'm going to throw myself into this. And I had decided this is what it takes to really take hold of that sense of calling and run with it. So what do you do when it becomes hard to do those things that are over and above the things that used to be, when the extra miles used to just be part of the daily run? When they start feeling like extra miles, and then they start feeling like a wall you've got to break through to finish the race, then you're into that. Became tough, because there was a juice to it that was beginning to, there was a tank that I felt that I was beginning to get to the end of,
right,
and it didn't feel like it was getting filled up anymore.
That sounds like, when I've spoken with I've had previous conversations, and in the nature of the work I do, and even from my own experience, that sounds like burnout.
I remember reading, there's plenty of burnout and recovery stories in the Christian ministry world. And it feels like almost like it can be seen as a bit of a badge of honor, because you can people write books about it, and have speaking tours on it, and it's like I always felt like, I don't want to get there. I don't want to get there. And I'd always had this thing where go to conferences that with the denomination we're in, and those back 2 rows of grey-haired men with their arms folded, and they definitely didn't want to be there. And I thought, please don't ever let me become that, resentful or miserable or cynical. But I was beginning to feel that, my life had changed significantly in that we'd had 3 kids. In the last 10 years, my oldest is 10. So now and then suddenly the work was becoming less and less compatible with what I want my kids. I was starting to realize, like, my kids will never get to have the same level of independence that others would. They'll never get to decide what they believe. I was never going to be able to go every Saturday to my son's football, because every 3rd Saturday there'd be something on. I'd never be able to take my daughters to gymnastics because it might be something else, weddings, and I was like, and I was starting to feel a bit resentful, because the juice had gone, and maybe it was burnout. I didn't crash. I don't feel like I had a nervous breakdown, and I don't use that. I don't use that for hyperbole, because I know plenty have. But I definitely wasn't well. And it wasn't until like we had lots of conversations around like I'm struggling with this, like this feels dry. And I tell you what the hardest thing is, like when you've been doing something for so long, you know how to do it, and you know
Yeah.
how to do it well.
Yeah.
I still knew how to stand up in front of people, make people laugh a bit, make people think a
Mm.
bit,
Mm.
help people feel like, help encourage them on their
Yeah.
journey.
Yeah.
I still knew how to do that.
Yeah.
And I remember really distinct Monday morning going, yeah, I don't know if that was, I don't know if that was God doing that, or whether that was just me knowing how to pull the right
How to do
levers.
it. Yeah.
And that felt horrible, because suddenly you're going like, whoa,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
want to be that.
Yeah.
And that became a wrestle. I ended up taking a few months off,
Mm.
um, as signed off by the GP.
Mm.
So yeah, there was like an element of stress that came with that, and
Yeah.
struggle.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that day I went off sick became my last day of being a Christian minister.
I'm really pleased that you've shared that, because I think that in leadership context, it's easy for that level of self-awareness,
Hmm.
that level of honesty, that level of disclosure, and that level of action,
Hmm.
decision making, is spoken about. I can, everything you just said there, I've seen that countless
Hmm.
times, and I know when we had our conversation, we was even, we spoke about some of my own experiences. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
it really resonates, and yeah, it takes some courage, I think, to be able to be
yeah.
honest about it and to step away. But I'm aware also that leaving full-time ministry, church leadership, it's not an easy one to do,
Hmm.
especially because of that sense of call. It
Hmm.
can also be tricky because it impacts so many other people because of the responsibilities you have. Da, 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 da. So where you feel it's appropriate, and again, I stress that, because I'm aware of some of the complexities of what it can be in terms of church life and leadership in particular. Where you feel it's appropriate, can you just walk us through maybe some of the highs and the lows of your decision to step away?
I'll be honest, the highs don't
Mm.
come for a while.
Mm.
There's just a lot of low, because you've got so much to process. You're trying to process this. Okay, well, my calling meant this,
Mm.
but now I feel like the role that I was using to feel like I was carrying out that calling is now, it feels like it's the wrong thing for me to do now. So does that mean I've been wrong for 17 years or plus, 20 years of, was I wrong about what that calling was? Have I misjudged this for so long? Is this just a phase I'm going through, hitting a certain 40, whisper the words quietly? Is this just a midlife crisis that you've got to ride this storm out and get through it? So there's a wrestle with that.
Mm.
There's a wrestle with, uh, having to untangle who you are from who the job is, and those two things very rarely happen. You are your job.
Mm.
There's so many people who know you as pastor. I wonder if like a community doctor, or a village that has one school, the head teacher, or like that kind of, back in the day, like the local Bobby, the like who they are and who their job are, become the same thing, and
Yeah.
we were fortunate in the church that we were involved with, was, had a lot of people part of that was seen as successful. I mean, often you go for a coffee anywhere, go for lunch anywhere, and there'd be
You
someone
bump
there, and
into people. Yeah.
yeah, 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 and you have to put your pastor smile on, and
Yeah.
you're like,
Game
how's it
face.
going?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, a little bit of that. So it's really tough with that.
Mm.
So you're having to try and detangle then, like, who you are, and then, if you spend 20 years in leadership in any industry, you're growing a reputation with that.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I was fortunate to be involved in some things that worked across our part of the country, and some national projects that our church and our denomination were involved with, and then you have a bit of name recognition, and I felt really uncomfortable around, maybe
Yeah.
be invited to speak at a conference or an event,
Mm.
and like in your name, picture would be on like a poster or a flyer, and
Mm,
it's like part
mm,
of like that. Never, I always wrestled with that. I felt deeply
yeah,
uncomfortable with that, but
yeah,
it's just part of the world. It's just part of the way things are.
yeah, yeah.
And but what so but then you're wrestling with that whole thing of ego and
Mm,
you know how you others see you. Well, if I step out, people don't really step out of Christian leadership. You do it until you retire or until you get retired,
yeah.
or until something you make a
Something
big
goes
old
wrong. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. So I was super aware that this was really unusual, and how would people interpret that? How would my peers interpret that I'd spent 10, 15, 20 years as shoulder to shoulder, and how would they see that? How would the congregation and the church community see that? Would they? What questions would they ask? And so there's some real challenges around that. Some deeply within that you're trying to untangle this idea of calling and identity and who you are. Who are you when you're not that? And similarly, you can't control that narrative. So
of
you have
course.
no control over what people will think or how they interpreted it, and you feel worried for people, you feel concerned, you feel like you've let people down,
Mm, mm,
but all the time you're just trying to take it each day as it comes to try to get some sense of clarity over, well, if not this, then what? And if
yeah,
you're not this, then who are you?
yeah. So there's something there about being able to untangle and separate your role from, I guess, your sense of identity, who you are, and
Yes.
there's that whole sense of call wrapped up in that in terms of what does that mean? You had this strong sense of call, and now you're feeling that actually moving away from the role is
Mm.
the right thing to do because of some of those very things you've described. There were some things that sat uncomfortably for you. There was some times where you was kind of feeling that actually almost like, yeah, playing a role actually, and that wasn't what
Yeah.
you wanted in your heart. That's what I'm hearing. It was more. You wanted more than that. But yeah, there's just the idea that some people don't get that, and that you
Yeah.
can't control what they're thinking or their view on it.
I think the other
What?
thing you can't control. Sorry, Nick.
No, go
you,
on.
you can't you can't control how you are growing, and none of us are the
Yeah,
same today as you were 10 years ago, 20
absolutely.
years
Yeah,
ago,
yeah.
and there was definitely a sense of like I felt like I was growing, but then I was growing and becoming a square peg in a round hole. They were words that I used with I got some counseling therapy to help with some of this journey to reflect, and while I was going through that, trying to process that transition, and my hope at
Yeah,
the time was I'd work through it and come back in.
yeah.
But I distinctly remember that feeling like I've changed shape here, and it's I'm not
Mm,
sure I fit
you
anymore.
fit anymore.
Yeah, some of that was around
Yeah.
some of my beliefs had evolved, and I knew deep down they weren't going to be compatible with the belief structure of the organization I was in. But that could translate into a number of different areas. If you're involved in something, and there might be something that changes within you or around you, and you go, actually, yeah, I'm not sure I'm the same shape as I used to be.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess that presents its own challenges because in leadership context in any capacity, there's going to be pushback because others will have their view of the direction you should be going in. There is
Mm,
that, and I've seen that as well. It's like, this is the trajectory you're on. But what do you
mm,
mean you're changing? What do you
mm.
mean you want to do something different?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
was there much pushback?
I think what it's really similar to
Mm,
is, when we're at school and
mm,
you've got 15, 20 best friends. It's like everyone in your class is your mate,
yeah,
and you're like, that last day of school, you're hugging and signing shirts, like, we'll
yeah,
definitely stay in touch. You're like, how did that work out?
yeah. I hear you.
There's a sense of letting go, and I have to, and I think this is one of the things I learned going through it was like I had to let it go. I I think because you realize you can't control what people's perception or interpretation of what was going on, or the why behind the what, that you letting that go, and even to use stronger terms,
Yeah,
let it die so something new can be reborn.
yeah,
You have to, for something new to come about, but death and life is a cycle, isn't it? And
absolutely. Yeah,
that was hard because you just got to keep quiet, carry on your journey. let that die. But as I let that die, what I was also letting die was that ego side of me that wanted to go like, this is what it was, and this is what's going on. And this conversation is the first time I've would have done anything that's public around any of this. So, and quite purposeful that just got to let that go, let that sense of who you were die, so who you can be born,
can evolve.
It's part of that as well. And so when I heard this quite recently, but when you feel angry about something, it's because it's an attack on your ego. When you feel sad about something, it's because you're grieving a loss, but you're growing. You can grow out of sadness, you can't grow out of anger. So the things where I felt like could have been done better about that transition, or things that I felt like maybe I was let down a little bit, or that's just anger speaking. And the reason I felt angry is because it was my ego. Who I was known for. I've got to let that die. That world carries on without me, and I have to be okay with that. It's letting that die. But there is a sadness that comes with that. And there is a grieving that comes with that. And anyone listening to this that's going through that transition, you feel sad, it's because you are experiencing a sense of loss. And there's a well-worn path that many have gone through ahead of you, where there is a process called grieving that you go through. But grieving comes from sadness, and growth also comes from sadness, and that's what you've got to let happen.
That's very good, John. That's very good. So you've made that decision. You've decided that it's time to move on. I love what you've described there in terms of the distinction between, not being able to grow out of anger, but being able to grow out of sadness, and one's connected with loss and one's connected to ego. I think that's a really, really helpful way of framing that. I'm aware that you weren't in this decision making, and you weren't in this context in a vacuum, because like you said, you have a life partner, and you also have 3 children. So when you floated this idea to your other half, when you kind of shared what it was that was starting to stir in your heart, and what you were thinking about change and doing something different, how did she react? What was that like?
I cannot speak highly enough of how Louise has gone through this process with me, and I with her. It is linked to her identity and the role that she had. And we got married, and then had honeymoon, then a week just home, and then started in full-time ministry. So it's basically all we'd known together. So that whole who we are as individuals, double that for who we were as a couple. Worth mentioning, you had a couple of lockdowns and a pandemic
just to throw that time in.
So just when this whole kind of process had started, everything went into lockdown, and we had to completely reinvent everything that we did. And bizarrely, that was probably it wasn't a healthy thing, but it was the adrenaline shot that you needed to suddenly just redo everything, and that your creative spark comes alive again. And and we threw everything into that. But that was as you came out of the bed. When we realized, that same amount of energy and creativity is now needed to rebuild community again, as people come back into a building, into a shared space. I realized I don't have that in me. But the reason I mentioned the lockdown, 3 kids, 2020, we had a 1-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 5-year-old. So when that first lockdown came about, so that's exactly what that sounds like. We made a decision every Friday night. We'd sit at our breakfast bar, and that would be our time. No telly, no phones, but we'd cook dinner. We'd have a cocktail, and we would spend that time talking. And that we processed every step of this together.
Yeah, great.
And when I got to the point, Louise was really good at knowing what the right questions were, or where she felt that she was processing this herself. But when I finally said, I think it's time for us to, finish this stage of our life and move on to something new. 2 things. 1, she couldn't have been any more supportive. 2, she already knew. She always does. And because she'd spotted it much earlier. She'd spotted that my tank was empty.
Yeah.
And I was actually driving her to an appointment somewhere, and she sat and read she just read this chapter of a book, and it was all about burnout. And she read it because
Mm.
I couldn't escape because I was driving. She was in the passenger seat, and she was like, "This describes you, doesn't it?" I was like,
Yeah.
"Yeah,
Yeah.
right." So
Yeah.
she knew all along, and
Yeah.
she's handled it brilliantly. There are relationships of all kinds that don't survive that kind of transition. So I'm
Absolutely.
aware of how fortunate I am for that, but
Mm.
as did survive.
That's great. Again, there's something about you, her knowing how you're wired, her knowing
Yeah,
you, and
yeah,
obviously
yeah.
you've invested in each other
Mm.
sufficiently for that to be the case. And like you said, some couples wouldn't be able to make it through that,
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I think that's testament to the relationship that you've kind of built together, which is
yeah.
brilliant. All right. I'm mindful of time, so there's a couple other things I want us to push through. This thing about transition, let's just continue there just for a moment. So decision's been made. Question for you would be, how clear were you? Again, almost 20 years doing
Yeah.
church leadership. Decision's been made. You and Louise have kind of come to the same place of, yep, we're going to do something different now. How clear were you about what was going to be next, John? Because it's a
Yeah,
huge decision.
absolutely. And this will resonate with anybody thinking about this kind of decision. Uh, Absolutely clueless. So I did not know. And you know this from your own experience. If you're involved in Christian ministry, I think like from the outside, people probably go, okay, you have to be able to stand up and talk in front of people. So public speaker. You also have to be able to sit with someone and have a cup of tea and a slice of
Yeah.
cake and be a nice vicar. So
Preferably
there,
carrot cake.
yeah. So, so that's I don't know. Forgive me if someone's listening to this and I've
Mm.
oversimplified for humour, but like they're the things. But you would know, like you're a jack of all trades, so you've probably done a bit of graphic design work because you've got to put PowerPoint
Yep.
slides together. You probably have to do some
Yep.
video editing. You've got
Yep.
to have some knowledge of comms and marketing. You've had to
Yep.
develop curriculum and write content
Yep.
and publish content. You've had to be a project manager and an event
Yeah.
manager.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to do all these different skills that you
Mm.
collate. You've had to manage. You probably might have had to manage staff, as I did.
Yep.
So we had 120, 150 volunteers that you're
Mm.
overseeing as well. You have to have
Mm.
some knowledge of finance. You have to have knowledge of charity commission and
Mm.
charity law, safeguarding if you work with children.
Mm.
So there's a
Huge.
whole thing. That's
Yeah.
yeah. So I had no idea what I was going to do. I just
Mm.
knew I couldn't do that anymore.
Yeah.
So I was fortunate that the church gave me a kind of a gift to finish as I finished to help with that transition and buy me a few months basically. And I was really grateful of two things. One was I found a podcast called Recovery. How does that sound?
Recovery. That's brilliant.
Yeah. It sounds like it is what it sounds like. It's
Yeah.
a recovery space
For
for
reverence.
ex-ministers. Yeah, exactly.
I love it. I love it. That's
Well, not
brilliant.
a British thing. It was an American thing, and the first
Mm.
couple of seasons of that, people just told their stories, and
Mm.
this is kind of maybe what I'm trying to do now is maybe in
Mm.
the same way that people told stories there.
Yeah.
This hopefully I can what I'm sharing here is going to help somebody else, and
Yeah.
it just gave it a confidence, and out of that came the sort of the spin off of that was a little community that comes out of that online where
Mm.
people are sharing here's how you need to write a CV, so when you say like you know how to lay a room out, or you know how to when you write a sermon, what you're actually doing is creating content, and when you're writing 6 sermons under the same theme, what you're doing is you're authoring curriculum. So kind of like a Google Translate for like one world into the whole world. Found that really, really helpful, both as a sense of like, oh, other people have gone through this and we all need to feel
Mm.
that, don't we? But then
Mm.
also really practical. And then friend of mine, Ian, who's brilliant, one of the smartest people I know,
Mm.
really helped me go, the things you do are because like what's at your core. So like how
Mm.
do you approach life? And when it comes to a CV, comes to a covering letter, comes to an interview, you go, this is my the way I go about things. And
Mm.
put me in any scenario, this is my modus operandum. And how to taught me how to sound like an expert, even if I'm not. So I had no idea, and just spent those months every day
Yeah.
and got really good at writing job applications and really good at going through that journey of you write something, you start going, oh, I might be able to do that. And then by the time you finish spending 2 hours writing about yourself, you go, I am everything that this organization needs. I am perfect for this job. And then inevitably, 2 weeks later, you get an email saying, sorry, we're not inviting you to an interview, or you were unsuccessful with your interview, and you're like, oh, and then you get that real low. It's like, anyone on the job hunt right now, I feel
That's
for you. It's
exactly it.
such a
Yeah.
roller coaster, such a roller coaster. But yeah, I didn't know, but I just had to learn how to translate my skills that I had one set of language for into a new set of language that was a bit more Indeed jobs friendly,
Yeah.
and learn how to present my skills in a way that would be understood and take confidence in that.
Yeah.
You're going like, oh, I've got all these skills, and then as those knockbacks come, which is such a normal part of job hunting, but each time you get one, it's like, oh, and after a while you're thinking, does anybody want me? But I had some really good interviews, and then I did have found this job, or sent this job at Torquay. It felt like a perfect fit, and I was really grateful for the opportunity. Still am.
Yeah. Were there any kind of surprise, unexpected, transferable skills that just kind of evolved through that process that shocked you, that surprised you?
Do you know what? I think when I started that process, I'd have gone for like those things that, I know, so more people are scared of public speaking than they are of dying.
Yeah, it's true.
Statistically.
Yeah.
But here, I'm all right with that. So, you start with these like, oh, you must have this real 1% stuff that somebody needs. What I've found, and I found this more once I'm in a role, it's just some of those other skills that are just the like core skills. So to be able to enter a room of any size, whether it's 3 people, 10 people, or 100, and be comfortable and make others feel comfortable.
Yeah. So soft skills, isn't it? Yeah.
100%. Yeah. I think, and these are leadership skills.
Absolutely.
So these are skills that all leaders should be having or working on. So to make people feel comfortable, to make people feel at ease, to make people feel like their work is valued, and that you're supporting them. Don't be a donut.
Yeah.
Just being nice to people. Just being kind to people. Taking the time to ask more questions than give answers. Those were the things that really came out, and they weren't the things that I was writing in my cover letters. These are things you realise I've learned these over time in leadership, and they are the things that will continue to make you a good person and hopefully a good leader.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And as you said that, what came to mind was your initial seminary training in John Lewis.
Absolutely, yeah. It's
again,
all about the customer service.
Exactly. Exactly. It's just knowing how to relate to people and that's really, really key. I think, what you just said there about, a core to leadership, so that's really valuable. That said, what leadership lessons do you feel that you learn in your previous context that you might apply differently in your new context? Is there anything that you might, lessons you learn that would influence the way you do things now in your existing leadership context?
Yeah, the thing that comes to mind, and I don't have a little list here to be able to share, so no doubt when we finish this, my brain will start wanting to give better options. The thing that comes to mind is this: you're seen as an expert. You're the man or you're the woman at the front that goes, "This week, everybody, this is what we're going to talk about," and there's a sense of like that expectation to bring something that makes everyone go, you're smart and you know what you're doing, and that makes me feel better about what I'm doing and what my belief system or whatever. And so there's a real emphasis on this, like you're the one who knows, you're the smart one, you're the one that has all the answers. But one thing I've always held is, and this is a coaching practice, isn't it, is to ask questions. So someone say, what do you think I should do? I'm like, well, I know what I would do, but what do you think?
What are you thinking?
Yeah. And usually you just need just like a few questions helps unlock the right answer in there.
Yeah.
The other thing I found with that is, as much as you think you do know the answer, someone else might also know the answer. And sometimes there's more than one right answer. So you can be right, but then someone else can also be right, and you can both be right.
Yeah.
But maybe it wasn't, maybe your way of doing it isn't right for this time and someone else's is. So I think
Yeah.
asking questions, and I still try to do that today. I manage a fab team where I'm at now. They're just brilliant people, dedicated to the people that they're looking after.
Mm.
And I try to say, like, well, what do you think? I'm
Yeah.
aware of what probably like needs to happen, or I might be aware of some of the other policies or principles or plans or projects that are in place. But what do you think? What would you do? And through that, people grow. So I think that's one that I've probably
Yeah.
translated across, and
Yeah.
along with there's more than one right answer most of the time.
Yeah. That's great. So I've got one other question that I kind of want to end on, but just speaking about your current context now, your leadership context, what do you get most excited about?
Any workplace is only because it's the people that you're working in,
Mm.
whatever role you've got at any level
Mm.
of leadership or not. So I love the fact there's some great people that I work with that make me laugh. They make me feel like I can be myself,
Mm.
and I think that's a really valuable thing.
Yeah.
It helps that the work we do makes a difference.
Yeah.
We work, our counsellors work with children, young people, our support practitioners work and work with parents. So there's a feel good factor to that I try and just hold that lightly, though, because I don't want to get stuck in a trap that I've been in before, where that starts to demand something that's not right. But it definitely helps knowing that we do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So that I guess the vision and the purpose of the organisation in terms of the difference they make. But again, we go back to John Lewis. It's the people. You've got a fab team of people that you work with and who you have the privilege of kind of supporting in terms of their development. And there's some transferable stuff you've learned there in terms of, well, it's not about having all the answers. You don't need to be the expert, but it does help to be able to just ask some really powerful questions, some really helpful questions to help facilitate someone else to be able to work out what they need for themselves. It's about empowering, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, great. Okay, so John, what's something that you once believed about yourself, about leadership, or about both, that you now know isn't true?
Yeah, I think it's that sense that how you understand calling is really, really important. And I believed that my calling was a really specific path, uh, and very much tied into what I was able to deliver.
Mm.
So be that in numbers of people attending a service, or the types of events that you could help that you would deliver, or then they'd be like, yes, that's the calling thing. And one day, that's what we're doing today. One day it'll be even bigger and better. I think tying that weightiness of calling to this delivery,
Yeah,
I no longer believe that.
yeah,
Calling has to be more than that.
yeah,
Calling has to be about today.
yeah,
If you are what you're called to today, because without today there is no tomorrow.
yeah.
There's a sense of being able to be present in the day in the day that you've been given.
Mm.
And today I've got this to do with you. I've got other work to do. I've got 3 kids I'm going to pick up from school later. I've got my daughter's birthday party tomorrow, and I'll worry about that tomorrow. But this is what I'm called to today. And if
Yeah.
I get too focused on what I deliver, then that will make it really hard I'll be back untangling that whole thing of calling all over again, which would be a shame, because I've grieved the loss of that.
Mm.
And now I'm enjoying the green shoots of whatever news coming out of it.
Fantastic. Okay, I want to thank you so much for your time. Okay,
Thanks, Nick.
I appreciate your time. I appreciate the energy you've brought. I appreciate the fact that you've been present. I think it's interesting what you just shared, because you have been present, and I think that does make a massive difference. And I think that's part of what you're describing as calling. Part of your calling is even having this conversation, because there will be many people who will be listening to this, and I'm confident, that they will really get value from it, and it will really be helpful for them in terms of their journey as well. I am going to just put a link to your LinkedIn. I think if people want to be able to make contact with you, they'll be able to find it. I'll put that all in the kind of bio description stuff, so we won't bore our viewers and listeners with that. They'll have all the details in terms of being able to get in touch with you. And what I would love for you to do before we end our conversation is Is there anything that you'd want to share? Maybe just one idea, one thought, one quote or takeaway to leave with our viewers and listeners?
I'll try and repeat what I said, but in less words. You are called to today. What's today bringing? Live today for what it brings. Live tomorrow when that one comes.
That's brilliant, John. Okay, well, I want to say thank you to you, Jon Jarvis, for joining me in Conversations with Nick. As I said, it's really about helping people to have insight and in listening to conversations with remarkable everyday people who are learning. And I say learning because I know that you would agree you're still learning, how to navigate love, life, and leadership. So thank you so much, John. And everybody tune in and we'll catch up again.
Thanks, Nick.
It's all gone pear-shaped, John. Did you hear that?
You sounded lovely to me. Don't worry about it.
I'm going to start that again.
Save it for the outtakes.